Hiya! Welcome! Well, I'd said I wasn't really going to do any vinyl tags this year, but this one has really caught my attention. The channel who started this tag, I've only just started subscribing to. This is courtesy of Patricia at A Little Beatles Corner, and she's taken over the Beatles tag for 2025. Rachel's Ghost did it last year, which I took part in, really enjoyed it. And I've been subscribing to a couple more Beatles specific channels over 2024. Therefore, I've been seeing more content about the Fab Four. I'm going to leave a link for Patricia's original tag video with all the prompts and stuff. Obviously, I'll be reading those out as we go. If you're into the Beatles, then please show us some support and get involved in this vinyl tag. I've not got all my stuff. I've just been lazy again this year, like I was for last year's vinyl tag. But I'll show photos of everything that I'm talking about up on screen. And I do own everything mentioned here, unless I specifically state that I don't. And looking at the prompts, I think there might be just one thing that I'm going to talk about that I don't physically own, but we'll get onto that later. So 15 prompts here. Let me get through this pretty quickly, or as quickly as I can. So question number 1 is favourite Beatles holiday song, and tell us why. Now this could obviously also include solo stuff from Paul McCartney, such as Wonderful Christmas Time, John Lennon and Plastic Ono Band, Happy Christmas, blah blah blah. I'm actually going to go for one that, even though it's only a humble B-side and it's sort of very throwaway, it's always really charmed me, and that is the B-side for Frieza Bird from 1995, Christmas Time Is Here Again. So that was originally, I think, a fan club flexi disc issue, sometime in the probably mid to late 60s, I would have thought. It was added to a little bit for the Frieza Bird single. I think something was spliced from another Christmassy recording on the end of Christmas Time Is Here Again, just to beef up the 1995 B-side. But it's a charming little song, you know, it's not got much to it, but it always makes me feel festive when I listen to it. So Christmas Time Is Here Again by the Beatles is my choice there. Question 2, favourite Beatles album cover, and this can be any country, any pressing. I mean, there's so many magnificent album covers, just real sort of iconic music album covers in the Beatles catalogue. But I think I'm going to have to go for Abbey Road, really. I've just always loved that cover. I've got sort of a half-size poster that's above my TV near the ceiling, and it just reminds me, A, what a great album it is, and B, what a great cover it is. So I've got to go with Abbey Road there, but I don't think there's a particularly bad, at least official Beatles cover. Well, maybe the White Album one's a bit boring. I doubt there'll be many people choosing that. Number 3, show your favourite Beatles coloured vinyl or picture disc. I'm going to go for the Abbey Road picture disc, because I do own that. I own all the Beatles remix picture discs. I think I bought most of them, probably all of them actually, last year. I was just deciding to double up, in some cases triple up, with my Beatles album collection, so that meant getting all the picture discs as and when I could. And because Abbey Road's my favourite cover, for me it's my favourite of the picture discs as well, but they're all great. I love them all. Show your favourite Beatles 45 picture sleeve, any country, so 7-inch single. I've got the Beatles 7-inch singles box set, and while it'd be interesting to have chosen one from there, especially as that's quite a unique set in that each picture sleeve in that set is from a different country. You know, we've got America, Japan, Canada, I think, numerous countries in Europe, elsewhere around the world, UK obviously. You know, there's a lot to choose from there, but I'm sort of trying to think a little bit more kind of well-known here. You know what, I'm going to go for Frieza Bird again. It's very simple, it's a John Lennon sketch, and it just brings back good memories for me of when that single came out, because that was when I was really starting to get into the Beatles. The anthology series had premiered on ITV. I bought the Frieza Bird single. I would end up buying Anthology 1 on CD and the subsequent anthologies. Frieza Bird, although it's quite plain in what it is, It's just got a personal touch really, it being a Lennon sketch, that's the main design. Number 6, show your most unusual Beatles vinyl or compact disc. This is a tricky one for me, because I don't think I've got anything that's particularly unusual. I used to have the stereo CD box set, but it was a bootleg. It was like a Chinese knockoff. And I know that because of how little it cost me back in the day. I ended up sending that out to a friend a few years ago, and he was really grateful for it. You know, he was a Beatles fan, but he wasn't really a music collector, so he didn't have any or hardly any of their albums. I passed that on to him when I actually bought the Beatles in mono compact disc set. In fact, I think that's what I'll choose actually. I'll choose the Beatles in mono CD set because it's probably my favourite Beatles CD release. I know the vinyl box set is like a holy grail for a lot of people. Rachel's Ghost managed to pick that up not too long ago, I think, and it's something I think a lot of people would like to see a reissue of at some point. Because I've got the CDs in mono and I've got the vinyl albums in stereo, I personally don't think I could warrant paying for the albums in that set one more time at such a high price. But yeah, while I wouldn't say it's unusual, it is something that I don't see very often on videos here on YouTube. So I will go for the Beatles in mono CD set because I love it. And it's unusual in the fact that, you know, it was quite an expensive purchase for me at the time, but I considered it an upgrade to the Chinese knockoff stereo set, and I'm delighted to have it, and it's got almost all of the Beatles' entire catalogue in, with the obvious later exceptions. Number 7, show a Beatles single that has a better B-side than A-side. Ooh, you've thrown me here, Patricia. I mean, the Beatles released some excellent B-sides. I'm just trying to think, and obviously I'm trying to steer clear of double A-sides because they are, by the nature of the terminology, 2 A-sides, A, double A. So there isn't really a B-side that you can consider, even if there might be one track you prefer above the other. It's really difficult, this, to be honest. I've sat here for quite a while thinking about it because it's maybe the most difficult question of the lot, this, because while there's loads of B-sides I love, I don't know if I love any of them more than the A-side, but one that I think comes close and maybe, depending on what mood I'm in, kind of tops the A-side perhaps, is Rain, the B-side to Paperback Writer. I love Paperback Writer, great single. It really showed the musical and psychedelic drug-related progressions the Beatles were making in their work. Rain is such a great track and an example of the Beatles' early psychedelia, and while Paperback Writer is a wonderful single, Rain really probably could have been a single in its own right, so I'm going to go with Rain for that one. Number 8, show a favourite Beatles song that was covered by another artist or band. Now this is where I'm showing something on screen that I don't actually own, but I do own it digitally. I just never got round to getting a physical copy, but it came out in, I think it would have been 1990, and it's Candy Flip's cover of Strawberry Fields Forever. Now, Strawberry Fields Forever is one of my all-time favourite Beatles songs, regardless, and you'd think I might be a little bit sort of wary of a cover version of such an absolute classic, but I do think Candy Flip do a brilliant cover. If you've not heard it, and I'm sure there's plenty of UK-based people who have, because it was a top 10 single, I think, back in the very early 90s. It's a kind of slice of indie dance, really. It really tapped into the Manchester and baggy vibe. I think it was Candy Flip's only big single. I seem to vaguely recall them releasing 1 or 2 follow-ups that didn't do very well. But their cover of Strawberry Fields Forever, I remember hearing that for the first time during the Radio 1 Top 40 countdown show and thinking, wow, this is absolutely amazing. I would like to get it on 7-inch or 12-inch at some point, but because I've had it digitally for years and years, it's never been a massive priority. But if I see it out and about, say, somewhere, then I will pick it up. But I don't actually own a copy of it physically, but it is probably, and there's been plenty again, but it is probably my favourite cover of a Beatles song, Candy Flip, Strawberry Fields Forever. Number 9, show a favourite song that was covered by the Beatles. This was an easier one than I thought, actually. Obviously, the Beatles released a ton of covers in their early years, certainly up to probably 1965. The one I'm going to go for is the live at the BBC version, because I think that's the superior version from the normal studio album one of Baby It's You. Great song, and the original is obviously fantastic, but I think the Beatles version that was on live at the BBC and then it was released as a single in its own right about what would have been 6 months or maybe a bit longer before Frieza Bird. Marvellous single. I've got the 7-inch. It sounds like it's something that the Beatles could have wrote, and it sounds naturally theirs, if that makes any sense, even though it's not. Baby It's You, specifically the live at the BBC version, and I like the live at the BBC sessions albums anyway, because I just think they've got a really nice production quality to them. So I'm a big booster for the BBC Sessions albums by the Beatles. Number 10, show the worst 3 songs that the Beatles wrote. Ooh, right, okay. So yeah, I was thinking a lot about this one, and I think I've narrowed it down to 3. I suppose at least one of them might be kind of quite obvious, really. So we'll get the obvious one out of the way. And these are in no order of preference or no order of how much I dislike them. So these are just how I've thought of them, really. But number 3, I'll go for Revolution 9. It's just a dirge. Loads of good stuff on the Beatles, aka the White Album. A bit of filler as well, because it is a double album and quite an indulgent one in places. But Revolution 9 is just too indulgent for me. It's meant to be musique concrète, or at least probably John Lennon mainly, his take on it, and I do listen to some of that sort of avant-garde, out there kind of stuff depending on who the artist is, but that doesn't work for me. And if I'm listening to the album, I won't skip it, but I won't enjoy it either. Then also, I'm gonna have to say Yellow Submarine, because it's just too kiddified, really, and it always reminds me of that scene from an episode of The Simpsons where I think Bart and Milhouse break into Ned Flanders' bedroom or one of his spare rooms or something, and Ned Flanders turns out to be a massive Beatles fan and Beatles memorabilia collector. I think it's Milhouse who asks Bart, "Oh, what's all this stuff?" And Bart replies something along the lines of, "This is that band who wrote all those kids songs, the Beatles." And I never liked that scene, much as I liked The Simpsons, particularly back in its glory days, because I feel sort of Yellow Submarine is really the main offender when it comes to people maybe of the next generation or a couple of generations after, saying that the Beatles were kind of a children's band, really. Of course they weren't, far from it, but Yellow Submarine is an admitted children's song. I don't hate it. I don't like the film that much either. I've talked about that before in previous videos. Number 1, and as I say, these 3 aren't in any particular order really, but I'm actually going to go with The Ballad of John and Yoko. It's too self-satisfied, really. Also, even though it doesn't really make any difference when you listen to it, the knowledge that it's really just a John Lennon and Paul McCartney track, there's no involvement from Harrison or Starr on it, doesn't help me personally. But just kind of this John Lennon describing everything that him and Yoko have been doing, and I get it, he was in love, he'd started all these interesting and avant-garde projects and peace campaigns with Yoko. I understand he wanted to kind of get that out, he wanted to write about it, record a song, but I think it's arguably their weakest single, really. I'm trying to explain my reasoning without sort of casting aspersions. It's not terrible, nothing the Beatles have done I would say is absolutely abysmal, but I don't like The Ballad of John and Yoko. I get it, I get the concept behind it, the point behind it, but it, for me, should have been a John Lennon solo single, or even a John Lennon and Paul McCartney or Plastic Ono Band or whatever it was at the time. It shouldn't have been credited to the Beatles, in my opinion, and I think that's my main problem with it, really. I do apologise, I've got the list here and I'm not following it well enough. There was a prompt that I missed earlier on, and it's one I was looking forward to answering as well. From number 5, show your favourite from the last 3 Beatles singles and then rank them. Yeah, I've got all 3 of those on 7-inch. Number 3, Now and Then. I was excited for it. I did a video all about it and also talked about other unreleased Beatles songs that are now probably likely never to ever get released in some form. It's good. Maybe it's a little over polished for me. It's a bit too, yeah, there's been AI on John Lennon's vocals. I've heard earlier fan edits of Now and Then that I think are actually superior, but I like it a lot. The video, yeah, parts of the video I've got problems with. And then number 2, I'm going to go with Frieza Bird. I love Frieza Bird. I love all 3 of these, to be honest. Frieza Bird is a very close second to the number 1 here for me. I've talked about Frieza Bird already. And number 1 is Real Love, which I know might surprise a few people, but I've always felt that's an absolute class song. Yes, is it more like a John Lennon solo composition with the Beatles playing on it rather than Frieza Bird, which felt more like a Beatles collective experience? Possibly, but just from personal preference, Real Love is my favourite of the 3 new Beatles singles. Right, let me try and get back in order now. I do apologise for that, Patricia. Hopefully it won't throw anyone who's wanting to do this tag yourself, because obviously she's put all the prompts in the right order in the video description, and I don't think that it needs to be particularly in the right order anyway, but still. Number 11, show the last Beatles product that you bought, vinyl, CD, memorabilia or book. I've downloaded loads of Beatles books, so really I should be showing you one of those. I think the last thing that I bought for my Kindle was the Mal Evans autobiography. I've not started reading it yet because I'm currently on a different Beatles book that I purchased previously. That's obviously not something physical that I can show you, so hopefully there'll be a graphic up to illustrate that. But Living the Beatles Life, is that called? I know I've definitely bought it, and I will be starting to read it very soon after I finish my current book. Number 12, show an ongoing Beatles collection that you're trying to complete. There isn't one really. I was intent on completing the Giles Martin remix picture disc collection last year, which I did, and then I wanted to complete the 2012 stereo vinyl reissues, and I completed those as well. So that's a question I don't think I'm going to be able to answer. I'm just trying to think. Also, even the 7-inch singles, like the newer ones, I mean, I got all the reissue 7-inches in the box set that I mentioned earlier. I don't want originals of those. I don't double up on singles, but I did want to get Baby It's You, Frieza Bird, Real Love, Now and Then, and the last one that I needed, and I got it a few months ago, was Real Love on 7-inch. Show a prized possession in your Beatles collection and tell its story. Well, as I've cheated throughout this and just shown photos of what I've got rather than the actual physical thing in my hand, I have got something to show you here, and some of you are going to hate this. But I'm going to show you my Blue Meanie Funko Pop. It's got a lot of glare to it because I've got it in this hard stack protector here, and it's bloody difficult to get it out as well. I'll try to, yeah, there we go. It wasn't as bad as I thought. Still a bit of glare, but the reason I'm showing the Blue Meanie Funko Pop is a few years ago I'd ordered the John, Paul, George and Ringo, and yes, I do have all those still. They're all over there in similar hard protectors. They were about £500 to get all 4 of those. So although it was the band members that I wanted, after I bought those and, you know, just kind of commiserated with myself over how much I'd spent on dollies, and if you don't like any Funko Pop content, then it's tough shit. Just scroll by or stop the video or whatever. You know, I'm sick and tired of defending myself really as to what I collect. You know, I'm not the only person in the world who collects these, and you know, if I was, I still wouldn't be ashamed. But anyway, I always felt that because the yellow Submarine Pops, this line is a line of 5 rather than 4. You can see all 5 of them on the back there. I always felt, well, even though I'm not a big fan of the film, and the Blue Meanie is just a cartoon character, I do want it. So I ended up, I don't know, maybe a month later, when I could finally afford to again, I ended up buying this from the same company. Needless to say, this cost me nowhere near £500 because it's just a single thing, and although there is Funko figures that are worth ridiculous amounts of money on their own. This fortunately isn't one of them. It wasn't cheap. I can't remember exactly how much. It might be pushing 3 figures, but I want to say, and my memory is awful, I want to say it was under £100. But yeah, I'd got John, Paul, George and Ringo from the Yellow Submarine line, and I just kept thinking, you know what, it's not a full collection without the Blue Meanie here. So I got the Blue Meanie a few weeks later. Number 14, show your favourite Beatles product that came out in 2024 and tell us why. I mean, I bought a fair amount of Beatles stuff in 2024. I just don't think any of it was released in 2024. Yes, actually, I can think of something that was Beatles related, or solo Beatles related, but I bought the George Harrison Zoetrope picture discs that came out for Record Store Day last year. I didn't buy them right away. I waited, I think they might have had a little bit of money off somewhere a couple of months later. And my favourite one out of those is Wonderwall music. Electronic sound is something that you really aren't going to listen to hardly. But I think Wonderwall music, with its Indian influences, is really good. It's a film soundtrack. So that's my favourite new Beatles related thing that came out that I bought in 2024. But as I say, everything else that I bought relating to the Beatles had come out in previous years anyway. And the final prompt, number 15, what Beatles product would you like to see coming out in 2025? Well, Beatley Tone touched on this when he was doing his tag responses, and he gave information that I, as someone who is certainly on the periphery of the Beatles community, didn't actually know. But he said that Peter Jackson and his team are working on tarting up the anthology series, the documentary series, presumably for a Disney Plus and or Blu-ray reissue. I'd love to see it come out on Blu-ray, I really would. That apparently, from what Tone was saying, is pretty much an almost certainty. So I'm very, very happy to hear that, because I love the anthology series, I love the albums, I love the documentaries. I've got the DVD set. I would certainly upgrade to a Blu-ray set if that ever comes out, and I would certainly watch it on Disney Plus if they release it that way. So there we go. Thank you again, Patricia, for running the Beatles tag this year. Enjoyed answering all those questions, even though I kind of got out of order there for a while. Please get involved. Link to Patricia's video is at the top of my description. But I want to say thank you for watching this, with special thanks that go to my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. I'm going to go now, and I don't think I'm going to do another vinyl tag this year, but who knows, someone might come out with something that I just can't resist, such as this Beatles one really. And I did do the Beatles tag last year as well, so it's nice to kind of do one in this vein 2 years in a row. But I'm going to go now. Do please join me again next time for my next music related video. Cheers everyone. See ya!